This morning, friends, I have some good news. I really do. You might have to kind of hang with it a little bit, but I have some good news, and I've got some wonderful people to share that good news with us. I've got a peek for us into the future. We know we can know some things about the future if we pay attention, and this morning we're going to learn a little bit about that. But today, right now, we are continuing to find ourselves in a nation that is struggling with a heightened awareness of economic inequalities, health inequalities. We are struggling with laws and systems that don't call for or don't allow for an indictment in the killing of Breonna Taylor. We have, of course, got centuries of racism and racial history that we are trying to unpack. We are nearing a historic presidential election of immense consequences, and now a Supreme Court nomination that has further confused and angered and emboldened and made some very happy and some very sad. And of course, we can't forget that for the last 6 months we have been kept away from each other. We've been thrown onto our screens and our tablets and our online communities and communication, and all of those styles of interacting and dealing with all of this stuff has felt awkward and clunky and inadequate. And in a way, just the form of our communications has been adding to the heightening of the discord, it feels like. As an adult, as I speak to other adults, people who have been around the block a few times, we learn ways to process information, to take information in, to then formulate our response and how it is that we're going to react and engage with the information and with others, right? We have recognized and watched other people in roles. We have assumed roles ourselves in our life and our society and our families, and we have been shaped by the communities we've been a part of, and how it is that you communicate in those societies, how you solve problems, how you do the things that need to be done. And yet, as we find ourselves in the midst of all of the questions and challenges that we find ourselves in, we also, many of us feel like we are not in control. We don't have the tools. We don't know how to speak this language, and our leaders have not necessarily been the leaders we've wanted them to be, and so we're struggling. But how you navigate all of this, how you keep treading water when the waves keep coming and you're not sure even what pool you're swimming in. Well, once again, we can be thankful. The good news is that that we have young people. We have new generations, youth, teenagers. Some call the teenagers today in their early 20s and teens the Generation Z. This is a generation that allows us to peek into the future, and there are hopeful things to see there. Think about it. These are teenagers today. They grew up in a time when all they knew was an online reality. They grew up with their families, their parents, even they having smartphones in their hands or tablets, right? They don't turn the pages of books, they swipe at screens. They don't remember a time when there wasn't Facebook. They only know that our president has been a black man named Barack or a white man named Trump. That's all they know. They've grown up in an America that has been quite divided and very, very digital. They've grown up with that onslaught of information as normative. They've had no choice but to learn how to navigate that landscape and to grow comfortable in it. In addition to the world that they've grown up in terms of information and screens and how communication takes place, they've also grown up in the most diverse generation in the history of the world. In the history of our nation for sure, but in any nation of any world, in the under 18 age group right now in America, there is no racial majority. Think about that for a second. That is our future. Our teenagers grow up in a world where there is no racial majority. There's something incredible about that. There's something very heartwarming about that and hopeful. This This world that I find myself in, that we find ourselves in as adults, is confusing and clunky. But this landscape is the native land of our youth. They have grown up here and they have found ways to cope with the diversity of opinion, deal with the bullying, the incredible opportunities for connection, the toxic communication styles, this wired world that has fed them and nurtured them. And so today we are lucky as a leader-full congregation to have many of those leaders in our community who are still in high school. And we get to learn from them, those who are natives to this landscape, and find hope in the way that they deal with, think about, talk about, and have worked through this new world that we find ourselves in. It's almost like there's a language being spoken that we don't quite understand, or I should say I don't quite understand. And yet it's nice to know that there are people in the room who do, and people through whom God will continue to work, so that in 20 years from now, 30 years from now, if we're not around anymore, we can trust people like the youth that we'll hear this morning to be the ones who are making sense of and interpreting and leading the way for the world that is emerging and will be in the decades to come. God is working and speaking to them in a way that made me think about the relationship between Eli and Samuel. Last week I read from 1 Samuel chapter 8, and that is the story of the prophet Samuel and the people of Israel as they became established as a nation. They said, Samuel, who was kind of an intermediary, a spiritual leader, they said, we want you to give us a king. And Samuel said, you don't want a king. And they said, no, we want a king. We want to be like other nations. And Samuel told them, this is what a king is going to require of you. Your children, your sons and daughters will be conscripted. All of these things will happen. And Samuel turns to God, and God says, no, go ahead, give them a king. That's the only way they're going to learn. And they learned that kings are not necessarily the answer. All the hopes that we want to put in one leader, in one standard bearer who is going to do it all and shoulder the burdens and lead the way, that typically doesn't work very well. God calls us to be a leader-full community, led by the Spirit of Christ that is at work in all of us, in our gifts and our strengths. And so the interesting thing about Samuel is, as he kind of had to anoint a new king for the people of Israel, he himself was the new kid on the block as he was growing up. His mother was barren and couldn't have a child, and she finally was able to have a baby and felt like it was a gift from God, and so she gave her baby up to God. And Samuel, as a little boy, grew up in the temple, and his mentor was the leader of Israel, whose name was Eli. And he grew up with Eli in the temple, and Eli, as Eli grew older and kind of lost his sense a little bit and couldn't necessarily hear what God was saying, as Eli's family was kind of falling apart a little bit, God began to speak to Samuel. And so I want to read from a little earlier in 1 Samuel, the story of Eli and Samuel. This comes from 1 Samuel chapter 3. Listen now for what the Spirit of God might speak to us, even those of us who are a little bit older and might be having a hard time understanding. Now, the boy Samuel was serving under Eli. The Lord's word was rare at that time, and visions weren't widely known. One day, Eli, whose eyes had grown so weak he was unable to see, was lying down in his room. God's lamp had not yet gone out, and Samuel was lying down in the Lord's temple, Samuel the boy. The Lord called to Samuel. I'm here, he said. Samuel hurried to Eli and said, I'm here. You called me. Eli said, I did not call you. Go lie down, Samuel. And so Samuel went to lie down. Again, the Lord called out to the boy Samuel. So Samuel got up and he ran to Eli and he said to him, I'm here, Eli, you called me. I did not call you, my son, Eli replied. Go and lie down. Now, Samuel didn't yet know, little boy Samuel didn't yet know the Lord, and the Lord's word had not yet been revealed to him. And so a third time, the Lord called out to Samuel. Samuel got up and he went to Eli and he said, I'm here, Eli, you called me. And then Eli realized that it was the Lord who was calling this young boy. And so Eli said to Samuel, go and lie down. If God calls you again, say, speak, Lord, your servant is listening. So Samuel went and he laid down where he'd been. And then the Lord came and stood there, calling just as before, Samuel, Samuel. And Samuel said, speak, Lord, your servant is listening. And then the Lord said to Samuel, I am about to do something in Israel that will make the ears of all who hear it tingle. Friends, this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Thanks be to God.
Thanks be to God. So in the voices and the wisdom of Graison Harms and Micah Broekhuizen, Tyler Kirchhoff and Jacob Norris, we have a world that is in, friends, good hands, because these are people, these are young members of our community, young leaders who were born into the world that we created, to learn how to safely navigate the toxicity of it and also the opportunities that it brings for connection and hope. And may the honest reflections that they share this morning make our ears tingle with understanding and hope. Here's our first video.
On Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, anything else, there are always people who are like you and who really enjoy doing the same things as you. So it's so good to connect with new people, have new conversations, and learn new things. That being said, social media can also be a really bad place. It's much easier to bully or say hurtful words to somebody when it's not face-to-face. And those words can really hurt.
In our age, guys, I can't speak for girls, but guys are for some reason just very mean to one another. No one's like really ever nice. We don't give each other compliments. It's just like whenever someone talks to you, it's either just about some random conversation or just being blatantly rude.
People in my grade usually communicate over like Snapchat, and that's usually how like either videos of people saying things or doing things spread. You know,
so with Snapchat, what's an example of something maybe that somebody's done or a video that's been sent around that has kind of ruined somebody?
There have been times when, you know, kids have said something like the N-word or like the F slur, and there's been a video of it, and like really opinionated people and people that just aren't okay with that will just like post it everywhere. Like there's stories on Snapchat, so you can put videos and photos there and like everybody can see it. So that's usually how those videos spread around. And
how many hours a day or a week would you say that kids your age are playing, or guys your age are involved in online games like that?
It could be large varieties. It could be anywhere from like 2 hours to 6 hours sometimes.
Someday. How have you seen this work out in your kind of youth culture online? Are there times when people will say things or do things that then you'll see kind of almost like this whole herd turn against them or shut them down or shame them in a way that kind of cancels them? Or has it happened to you?
So this is funny because this like something like that literally right before Kat texted me about this. So something happened to one of my friends. She's like a school friend, not like one of my good close friends, but like, you know, I know her and she's a nice person. So this person is a Trump supporter, right? And so there was this TikTok that went around, and it got 200,000 likes, and it was about like exposing Trump supporters in the Olathe area, which I don't know why you would do something like that, especially to a high school kid. And essentially the TikTok posted about 3 other girls' Instagrams and told them to flame the comment sections of their posts. And
Essentially,
what does that
doxing
mean?
them.
Jacob, what does that mean to flame?
Well, so pretty much just go, like, the TikTok told everybody to go down and say like mean things about her in her Instagram comment section, and like tell her that she was like a bad person, which to me, especially to a high school kid and to a high school girl, is completely unacceptable. And I don't know why you would ever want to do that to somebody.
Because of their political views.
Yeah. I just can't fathom why somebody would try to do that to somebody.
On the topic of cancel culture, you will see it no matter what platform you're on, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube. You see it everywhere, wherever there are famous people or just everyday people. People will always find something to complain about or to blame on other people.
Yeah, I think cancel culture, at least in my school, in my district, is a huge thing, because when, somebody messes up just once, almost everybody hears about it.
Yep.
Because things also spread quickly with like how much social media people use. Yep. And how much people communicate there.
Something that goes kind of side and side with cancel culture is cyberbullying.
Yeah.
In the video game community, there's a lot of cyberbullying.
Okay, how would you define that?
Well, like constant insults and I don't know, like just constantly putting someone down, and it's never like switching from person to person. When someone has decided their target, they don't back down from their target. And I think the reason why that happens is because being online gives them an outlet. Like in person, it's like harder to bully someone, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
When you're being toxic in a video game, it's when you're angry at someone in the game for any reason, really.
And someone who's supposed to be on your team, you're supposed to be working together.
Right.
I couldn't agree more with Tyler. I mean, Tyler's brought up like a lot of really good points, and like just stuff that happens in our daily lives, like working with, I'm playing a video game and I'm working with somebody who, thinks my voice is funny, or thinks my friend's voice is funny, or thinks that, I'm bad at the game or something. Like it's hard to work with those people, but it's just a daily occurrence that just happens every single day.
It's a lot, because kids like my age especially are just, some of them are so opinionated these days.
Yeah. Especially
with things that are going on.
Thank you so much for sharing with us, all of you. This is so much to think on. In this first video, our youth have really staged the issues of cancel culture and cyberbullying from their perspectives. But these issues are not so different from the issues that face us all right now. There have always been harsh words, rallying of groups to spread hate, and calls to punish or cancel people for things they have said and done. It is just that now these calls spread even faster through all of our social media platforms, as some of our youth shared about this morning. The anonymity of the internet emboldens some people to speak more aggressively, or to call out others in a way that hasn't existed in the past. And the record the internet keeps means that people can be called out for things said and done years or even decades earlier. But for our youth, this often takes the form of cyberbullying, which is a key force behind the increasing rates of depression, anxiety, and suicide among adolescents around the world. So what can we do to help? We're now going to turn to our second video and learn from our youth about what they do to help turn away from hate and personal attacks, and what we can do as well to be better as we engage online and in real life?
I hate to say it, but especially now, there's just a lot of hate going around, especially at my age, because people post things on social media and then other people get mad at them, and then they like post things and different people get mad at them because everybody has different opinions. And I think in some way, some people haven't learned to respect that.
Most likely somebody is saying hurtful things to you because they have experienced or heard hurtful things towards them.
And I think getting a lot of people to just hate them for the rest of their lives or the rest of the time they're going to high school with them is a little bit harsh.
But if somebody was, you know, throwing shade at me in the internet, like there's like, if something happened like that to me, right now, I'd either probably ignore it or, you know, just mute up, because, you know, there's no point in fighting back.
What does mute up mean?
Just mute your mic, don't say anything, kind of ignore it. Mute them.
Mute that. That's a good metaphor. I wish we could walk around in life and just kind of mute people like that, you know. But you can mute yourself. That's a good point. Sometimes it's like, you know, the wisest thing to say right now is nothing.
Just like it is easy to bully on the internet, it is also so much easier to respond to that hate on the internet. Through talking with trusted adults and thinking things out through my head, I've come to realize that it's so much better to be the bigger person in that circumstance. Well,
and I'm just glad to hear, Jacob, that I mean, you know, I'm not going to guess what your political affiliations are, but that it wasn't like you felt the need to jump on, that your need was you felt the need to reach out to that person and to feel empathetic. I think that's pretty impressive.
Thank you.
Yeah. Where does that come from?
You know, it probably comes from my dad and my mom, because both of them are they're very caring for me and just my family in general, you know, and they've helped me through a lot, like the divorce and everything.
Yeah.
Like they've always reached out to me when I felt bad. And I think that's really where I get it from.
So when someone does say, you get a video of someone who's using the N-word or something like that, it's a pretty horrible thing to do. And do you think there's something righteous about that, and or is it always a bad way to kind of discipline somebody publicly like that?
So in my opinion, I'm usually pretty open-minded about these things, but yes, like obviously that's just a terrible thing to do, and you should never be doing that, and there should be probably some backlash for that. But I think posting it everywhere and making it known for everybody to see is a little bit harsh.
And it is important to remember that people are people. We all make mistakes. Everybody has their slip-ups and everybody has an off day, but that does not mean people should not be held accountable for their actions and for their words.
Yeah, sometimes you do gotta ask your friends, like, is this text a little too risky to send, or like, should I post this?
I also believe that people should really do their research before they join the bandwagon of cancel culture. Oh yeah, I heard this on the internet, so it has to be true, you know, they have to have said this or done that. And I think it's really easy to get caught up in the movement and the motion, but it is really, really important to do your own research, make sure you know your facts for anything you see on the internet.
Well, you know, one of the things that I've been thinking about in this whole thing is what are the stories that shape us, and what are the sentiments and the feelings that set our true north and what we default to, and really it's the stories that we learn, and it's the truths that we hear when we're growing up, that hopefully affect how it is that you respond in difficult times. And so my hope is that you know, I know church, and especially church for kids, isn't always it doesn't always make a whole lot of sense, and sometimes your parents are dragging you along. But my hope is that there are stories being told, and you're watching how people treat each other, and you're listening to how people speak about each other and listen to each other and try to love each other, and that sets a norm for this is what it means to be a good person. This is how I interact in a world with people who are different than me.
I'm glad you guys decided to talk to some of the kids to see our perspective, because, you know, we're part of the world too.
That's right. Big part of the world. Well, I know there are a lot of people who are emboldened, and my guess is there's been some days when you guys have gone off on people or not been your best selves on social media. But I know there's a lot of that out there, and so I applaud you both for trying to be good players, good partners out there, and when you have the opportunity to encourage somebody rather than give them crap, good for you. There really are, I think, more good, decent people out there than not. It's just that sometimes the nasty ones are the loudest ones. And so you good guys, keep speaking up. I'm cheering for you.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you so much. We thank you, Tyler, Jacob, Micah, and Graison, for sharing your wisdom with all of us this morning. I'm so glad to know that you are the leaders in your schools, your homes, and here at Second as well. And I sincerely look forward to seeing how you will continue to develop as leaders in the years ahead. You give me a lot of hope for what's coming ahead. In future weeks, as we continue to transition into our new series on leaderful movements, I hope that we can continue to see traits that you have presented here today, showing grace to others, being hopeful for a better tomorrow, being slow to lash out, and seeking counsel when we are unsure how to proceed, and pursuing encouragement rather than spreading hate. These are the traits of a compassionate and bold leader. Thank you all for modeling these for us this morning.